Presenting our commencement speaker today is Mr. Douglas Wolfberg. Mr. Wolfberg is Vice Chair of the Widener University Board of Trustees and serves as a member of the Dean's Advisory Council. He is a founding partner at Page, Wolfberg & Worth, and as we all know, just recently presented the law school with its most outstanding gift and named our courtroom the Wolfberg Courtroom. We're pleased to welcome Mr. Wolfberg to the commencement ceremonies today, and he will introduce our graduation speaker, Dave Sunday.
Good morning, and congratulations to all the graduates and to your families. Greetings, President Robertson, Pennsylvania Attorney General Dave Sunday. Widener Commonwealth Law School welcomes you to today's commencement ceremony. Your path to public service began with your enlistment in the United States Navy, where you served with distinction. You were deployed to the Persian Gulf in support of Operation Desert Strike, and later to South America for counter-narcotics operations in the Caribbean. That service helped shape the leadership, discipline, and resilience that continue to define your work today. During law school, you expanded your commitment to global service as a legal intern with the United Nations Office of the Secretariat, supporting peacekeeping efforts abroad. Following graduation, you clerked for the Honorable Joseph C. Adams of the York County Court of Common Pleas before beginning your career as a prosecutor in the York County District Attorney's Office. Over time, you rose to serve 7 years as District Attorney, leading major prosecutions, supervising the Felony Narcotics Unit, and helping guide multi-agency efforts to address crime, addiction, and public safety. You also served as a Special Assistant United States Attorney for the Middle District of Pennsylvania, prosecuting complex gang, gun, and drug cases, including leading a major operation targeting violent crime in York County. Your leadership and record of service led to your election as Pennsylvania's Attorney General in November 2024. You assumed office in January 2025, becoming the Commonwealth's Chief Law Enforcement Officer and continuing a legacy that includes fellow Widener Law Commonwealth graduate Michelle Henry. In that role, you have emphasized accountability, public safety, and a commitment to justice grounded in both fairness and redemption. We recognize you as a dedicated public servant and a leader shaped by service at every level. For these reasons, Dave Sunday, Widener University Commonwealth Law School, is pleased to introduce you as the commencement speaker for the class of 2026. General.
Thank you. Had to do it, I'm sorry. So it's an absolute honor to be here with everyone, and I want to say to President Robertson, Dean Cummings, faculty and staff, family and friends, and of course the class of 2026 of Widener Commonwealth Law School, congratulations. It is an absolute honor to be here with you. Now, I was told prior to speaking that I had about an hour to give my speech. So before Dean Cummings tries to tackle me, I'm not sure how well that would go, just know that I'm kidding. Just know that I'm kidding, and I do hope to share some thoughts of our collective varied paths to receiving our JDs and why those paths actually strengthen us and why we need each of those different paths in the practice of law. So for those of you that don't know me, and a lot of you do now after Doug's kind introduction, I am Pennsylvania Attorney General Dave Sunday. And like you, I once sat right where you are here today, and I sat there as a graduate of Widener Law School. And admittedly, that was quite a few years ago. It was 19 years ago. So someday you also be older, and there'll be young people sitting there. I just want you guys to remember that. So when I graduated from law school, I will tell you, just like we saw tonight, the best and the brightest stood from this podium to address you. And the best and the brightest addressed my graduating class. So I can assure you, with all humility, that this is my very first time addressing a law school graduation. But what connects us isn't just the institution, it's the journey. The uncertainty and the decision to pursue things that just aren't easy. And that's where I want to begin. Every single person in this room has taken a different path to get here. You have different backgrounds, you had different challenges, you had different motivations. Some of you may have known from a very early age that you wanted to become attorneys. Others may have arrived at that decision at some point later in life, such as myself. I fell in the second category. I had no clear roadmap. I didn't know law school was in my future. I will tell you in all candor, I say this all the time, amongst my family, I have far exceeded the world's expectations for my life. Exactly. So, but that's an important part of this speech, and we'll come back to that. So, I joined the Navy right out of high school. I needed direction. I had no idea what I wanted to do, so I literally just went and enlisted in the Navy. I was a young man. I was 18. So for those of you that know what military life is like, I was an E1, which meant that I swabbed decks, I chipped paint. I literally was the lowest rank that existed on my ship. But I will tell you that throughout my deployments to the Persian Gulf, South America, and the Caribbean, it was an experience that absolutely shaped the rest of my life. It gave me the discipline that I needed, it gave me perspective, and a much deeper understanding about the world. But eventually, like many of you will experience at different points in your life, I reached a moment where I had to ask myself a simple question: what's next? What am I doing? And that question can be unbelievably intimidating. At least for me it was. Maybe you guys have it all figured out, but for me, it was extremely, extremely intimidating. I mean, it feels like a tremendous amount of pressure. But I've come to realize that it's the opposite. The asking yourself what's next truly is where opportunity begins. After the Navy, I decided to pursue my undergraduate degree and eventually law school, all while working at UPS for 8 years. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't easy, but it was mine, and it's what made me, it's my life. During law school, I had the opportunity, as was mentioned earlier, to intern at the United Nations in New York, where I met my wife, a moment that changed my life absolutely forever in ways I could have never, ever predicted. And after graduation, I did clerk for a judge in York County, the Honorable Joseph C. Adams, who 19 years after that, he and I stood on this same stage and he swore me in as the Attorney General, which was unbelievably special and moving for me. When I was in the DA's office, you know, just like you graduate and then you're off to the races, right? They gave me 10,000 files. They said, go do things, and you just got to figure it out. You got to go do it. I don't mean to scare you, but that's an important part of the way that this works. And so I ended up starting with in a courtroom, hoping for the best, to ultimately prosecuting 20 first-degree murder jury cases, attempted murders of police officers, murders of children. We did a tremendous, tremendous amount of work. With the opioid epidemic in law school, they don't teach you about addiction, but we had to learn really quick. We had to learn about addiction, about the mental health crisis. We had to learn about reentry. We had to learn about ways to decrease crime by helping people get opportunities and jobs. And while I was an assistant DA, I literally was going to manufacturers asking them to hire people that were coming out of prison, because I knew that we had to get creative and find ways to make our community safer. Now, I will tell you in all candor, this is not a speech aimed at telling you how awesome I am. That would be a very short speech. It probably would have been all over already. I'm telling you this solely because no one follows a straight line. No one has the same path, and there are things that will come up in your life that you could never imagine that'll lead you down different opportunities. And that's the point. There is no single path to success. There's no uniform timeline, and there is not one version of what your career or life is supposed to look like. I promise you that your beginnings do not define your ceiling. I say that again, your beginnings do not define your ceiling. No matter where you started in your life, your path and your destination were not decided. We all come to this day in different ways. In fact, many differences in this room. Your different stories, perspectives, and experiences, these are not obstacles, and you can never view them as obstacles. Those are your greatest strength, and you can never forget that. The legal profession, and frankly our society, depends on people who think differently, who have varied backgrounds, who challenge assumptions, who bring new ideas to old problems, and who are willing to listen as much as they speak. That last part is very important. It reminds me of the saying that my Nana, my grandmother, used to say to me, that you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Use them in proportion. Because here's the reality. You can't advocate for people that you don't understand, and you can't understand people if you're unwilling to communicate, to listen, and to build relationships, especially those who see the world differently than you do. Some of the most absolute meaningful growth in my life has come from working alongside people that had different viewpoints, different life experiences, and different approaches to the way that they handle problems. And not because it was always comfortable, because I promise you it wasn't, but because it made me better. It sharpened my thinking, it expanded my perspective, and it reminded me that respect and collaboration are far, far more powerful than division will ever be. As you move forward from today, you're entering a profession that holds immense responsibility. Whether you go into public service, private practice, business, advocacy, or something completely different, and I promise you those completely different are out there, you will be in positions where your words will matter, your decisions will matter, your integrity matters. And so will your ability to connect with other people. Not just the people who agree with you, but especially those that don't. Take the time to build relationships, support one another, lift each other up, because while your journey is your own, I promise you, no one succeeds by themselves. No matter where you go and where you're working, no one succeeds by themselves. Now, I want to talk about something that may sound a little unexpected coming from the AG, but I believe in magic. Not the kind of magic you see in movies or on stage. No wands or illusions. I'm talking about something far more real. I'm talking about the moment that preparation meets opportunity. The moment when you make that call and you dive within yourself and you take that risk on yourself. The moment when you choose to keep going when it would be far easier to stop. And I promise you that those days will come. It might be next week, a month from now, years from now, but that moment will absolutely come. And that, my friends, when that moment comes and you choose to keep going, that's when the magic happens. I promise each one of you has that within you. You have the ability to shape your own path, to make decisions that define not just your career, but in some ways more important, your character, to create impact in ways that you can't yet fully see. I've had absolutely fantastic days in my career, and I have had tremendously, tremendously difficult ones. Cases that have stayed with me, decisions that have carried weight, moments where the path absolutely was not clear. But through it all, one truth remained constant. We are not passive participants in our lives. We are in control of ourselves and our own direction. No matter what anyone else says or does, you are in control of the way you respond to it. And that is both a responsibility and a gift. We live in a world that is constantly changing. It moves fast. It can be unpredictable, and at times it can feel absolutely overwhelming. But you are prepared for it. You've put in the work, you've developed the skills, and you've proven that you can adapt, you can persevere, and you can succeed, so don't stand still. And I want to share with you a very brief story that I have reflected on for many, many years in the course of my life as a district attorney, as an ADA before that, as a federal prosecutor, and I still reflect on it as the Attorney General. So if any of you have not read the book Courage is Calling, Fortune Favors the Brave, I ask you to go get it. It was early in his military career that Ulysses S. Grant was on a long journey across East Texas. Supplies had began to run low. One of his men was sick, a horse gave out. There in dangerous territory, at the mercy of outlaws and the elements, he had to cover over 70 miles to Corpus Christi to avoid being declared absent without leave. President Grant and another man set out by themselves. They were rushed and vulnerable with countless creeks and rivers to cross in this hostile territory, filled with thick scrub brush and rattlesnakes and wolves. The two men heard the most unearthly, frightening howling from wolves. They couldn't see anything because of how tall the grass was. But there was no doubt that the pack was near. Near, mean, and ready, as Grant wrote in his diary, to devour our party, horses and all, in a single meal. He wanted to turn around. In fact, he prayed secretly that his companion would suggest that they turn around, wanting nothing more than to get away to safety. The other officer, a little more experienced than him, smiled and pushed on. Grant, how many wolves do you think are in that pack? Not wanting to seem stupid or a coward, Grant tried to casually underestimate the threat that terrified him, and he said, about 20 maybe, which betrayed his racing heart. Suddenly, Grant and the other officer came upon the source of the sound. There, resting comfortably, with mischievous confidence, were just two wolves. So unnerved by the danger with which he was unfamiliar, it never occurred to him to question the racing of his heart, of the extrapolations of his mind. And 4 decades later, after a lifetime in public service, after serving as President of the United States, Grant would often relate that he would think about this incident when he heard of a group changing course due to criticism, or when someone was considering giving up because of bad odds or fear of an unseen enemy. The lessons in these situations, he concluded, were there are always more of them before they are counted. Don't ever forget that. Don't ever let the fear of uncertainty hold you back from pursuing what matters to you. Take the opportunities in front of you, and if they don't exist, create them. Because each of you have one life to live, one. And each of you has worked way too hard to settle for anything less than making it meaningful. For me, that meant a career in public service. It took me around the world, and it brought me home. That reminds me that no matter how far you go, your roots, your values, and your relationships, they will always ground you. So as you leave here today, I will leave you with this. Embrace what makes you different. Seek out people who will challenge you. Communicate, listen, build relationships. Help others along the way. But never lose sight of the fact that your life, your career, your future is yours to shape. That's where the magic is. And don't ever, ever, ever let fear of the unknown stop you from doing something that you believe matters. Don't ever let that happen. And the minute you face that and you walk through it is where the magic happens. I have no doubt that each one of you is capable of doing everything we talked about, having amazing, wonderful, unbelievably courageous lives, and I congratulate every single one of you, class of 2026. Thank you, and I wish you the best on the journey ahead.